So we're live. So Ken,
hi,
filmmaker
Stephen.
behind. Yeah, thank you.
Pleasure to be here.
No, and congratulations.
In London.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I appreciate it. Thanks for selecting my film.
Well, fully deserved. Your film to be an American. You're the filmmaker behind it. As I said to you pre-interview, if you could just give us a brief synopsis about your documentary, that would be wonderful.
All right. Well, my name's Ken Hurley, and I made a film called To Be an American. And I went around the entire country to every state in the Union. And Canada as well, asking people one question, the same question to everybody, relative to their American experience. Nobody knew the question before they came on camera. And the way I met people, and they were strangers to me, the way I met them, I walked up to them and said, "Hi, my name's Ken Hurley, and I'm making a film about Americans." And that gave them a little bit of a pause, and they said, I'm an American, maybe he's making a film about me. And I said, yes, I'm making a film about Americans. I'm asking people one question, same question to everybody. And it's an opinion question. And what we were trying to do is to discover whether or not there's such a thing as an American identity. And if so, what is it? And if not, what do we have as Americans? So I got people to come on camera, and after about a minute or so of meeting me, because I wouldn't tell them the question, nobody knew the question before coming on camera. And then they were on camera, I asked them to tell me their name, spell it, asked them to tell me what they did in life, and they would talk a little bit about themselves. And then they would say, all right, here's the question. From your opinion, your perspective, what should it mean to be an American? And now the camera's rolling and their eyes are thinking, and you can tell everybody is thinking about how to respond to that, because almost everybody, to a person, had never considered the question before. People did get concerned about the word should. They felt it might be too much of a directive. In other words, you should do this, you should do that, you should. But the word should, when you actually look up the definition, is a directive, but it also includes hopes, dreams, and aspirations. What should it be? We can't have what we want unless we have a vision of where we're going. So the question actually included people's hopes, dreams, and aspirations. So we put that all together in a film, and the film is the respondents and the surprising answers of a lot of the people relative to the question. But there were two follow-up questions.
Oh, right.
The two basic follow-up questions were, after they described what it should be to be an American, if they could do that, I asked, is that the way it is? And almost to a person, people said, no, that's not the way it is. That's the way it should be. That's not the way it is. So I said, how do we go from the way that it is to the way that it should be, from your perspective, for more people? So now we're into, what are we going to do to make things better? What's our vision? Do we have a collective vision? So the film tries to capture all of that.
And what persuaded you to do this? How did you come up with the idea?
Well, I actually was a person in the States, still am, who is invited to make speeches on constitutional issues, and I would be invited to panels to discuss in public forums various controversies relative to our United States Constitution. And I asked the question of myself, and that was one of my speeches, what should it mean to be an American? That was in 2010, I was doing that. And I was answering the question, but I realized, this is my answer.
What is your answer then?
Well, the answer is 27 minutes online, and you can go watch it online.
What your
my answer is, it's out there. They videotaped it a couple of times, and that's there. It's a 27-minute answer. But it boils down to my answer. It should mean to be an American is to be an informed, involved, engaged citizen, and a voting citizen. You don't even have to be a citizen, but if you're in America as a foreign national, for example, you want to participate in the American process as much as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Too many people have self-disenfranchised to the point where they don't even see the value of their vote. They say, well, the politicians do everything and they don't care about me, which there is truth to that, but the majority of the people in America are not registered to vote, who could be registered to vote and choose not to vote because they don't see the process affecting their lives or them being able to affect the process.
So do you mean that you believe that they don't see they don't see any value in doing that.
They don't, yes, too many people in America do not see the value of participating in the process of being an American. And this film is actually a motivational film to get people to be involved and to see the value of their own vote. And
why, it seems like a churlish point here, but why did you include Canadians in that?
I wanted to go to Canada. I figured as long as I'm taking 2.5 years to travel around, I wanted to also go to Canada, which has some beautiful places. I mean, you go to the Banff National, go Lake Louise, Jasper, the Canadian Rockies are gorgeous. I started in Florida. Mm-hmm. And I drove diagonally across America, northwest to Alaska, right. Stopping all along.
Literally, yeah.
Stopping the whole length away. Then I went back to Austin, and I regrouped, and then I went other directions from Austin, Texas, which is sort of centrally located in America, which is where we based the film out of, Austin, Texas. We did the editing there, and that's where the studio was that we worked from.
Okay, so this all stems from a question that you had answered yourself, and obviously the germ of an idea to make a film.
I posed the question to lots of civic groups in where I was speaking, and answered it for myself, but then I wanted to see, well, who am I to say this is what it should be? Let me ask the Americans. So I went around and interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people, getting their responses. What surprised me most is the trouble people had answering the question. Not a happy surprise, but what I learned from the hundreds of people is that people started to fall in various buckets. They started to have similar answers, different words, but similar types of answers, and various buzzwords. I said there were 3 basic questions. It started with, what should it mean to be an American? Is that the way it is? How do we go from the way it is to the way it should be? But also contained in that is things that people would say. They would have various buzzwords. What should it mean to be an American? Very often, the most often used word is, and it was often said by a male, puffing his chest out, balling up his fist. What should it mean to be an American? Freedom! As if he was ready to fight on the spot. Freedom! It should mean freedom.
But was there a geographical split in the general answers? So, I mean, you said that you could group them, but is that based on geographically?
No, it wasn't. It didn't seem to be. I don't think I had a large enough segment of the population to be able to do a demographic study based on geography. Right. I do notice a difference, though, in the south of America versus the northeast or versus the northwest. There are differences. Racism we have a problem with racism in America. It's a systemic problem too. There are some people who are still dealing with the Civil War or the war between the states. They're not happy with that outcome. There are people that are not happy with the outcome of the writing of the Constitution. They feel it gave too much federal power and not enough power to the states. Those people still exist. And we address all of that in the film too.
And I should have asked this earlier actually, what is your background leading up to, what is your general background? What were you doing before you made this film? I'm sure you've made other films, but you can probably see what I'm getting at. You know, where do you come from and to arrive where you are now?
Well, I come from the business world. I mean, I've been in business 40 years, and I finally got to the point where I said, well, I don't have to do that anymore. About 12 years ago, I stopped doing the corporate business type of thing, and I started doing and living my passions, and one of my passions is civic education. Civil learning and civil responsibility. And I started a nonprofit organization, an NGO called Civication Incorporated. Right. We take the word civic and we take the word education, and we created a new word called civication. And from that, that's our platform to find different projects to go out and throughout America and try to educate the public on the need for their informed, educated involvement. An informed citizen is our best citizen, and we want them to vote And we want them to vote from a perspective where they actually are interested in learning about the issues. If you don't, if you are not an informed citizen, you become fodder for the cannon of those who are. And you become prey to those who can manipulate and lie and tell you things that probably are not so.
Fake news and...
We see it all of the time.
Yeah.
But if you don't have enough wherewithal, savvy to say, wait a minute, this doesn't even resonate with me. Let me double check, let me triple check. Is this accurate? We have such an ability to do that now at our fingertips.
Yeah, it's incredible, yeah.
But people don't. What they hear sometimes is what they want to hear, and they go, this makes sense to me. And that's what gave us the birth of alt-right and the birth of Brexit here.
And Brexit.
Right, all of that kind of stuff are playing on people, in my view, who don't take the time to actually educate themselves, or they are coming from a perspective of deep-seated racist type of a viewpoint relative to their worldview.
Was there any answers that were completely unexpected? I'm sure a lot of them were unexpected, completely unexpected, to the point that made you literally sharp intake of breath, or wow, I wasn't expecting that.
Yes, there were several. A
standout one.
Yes. There were these buckets. There were about 6 major buckets, but then there were the outliers, people who didn't fit into a bucket. I'll give you an example. I was in North Carolina at an arts festival, and there was lots of artisans there, and I met this big burly man wearing overalls, a huge white beard with a mane of hair that looked like he was a lion. And he had a deep voice and very articulate. So I go up to him, I do my introduction, ask him the question, what should it mean to be an American? Immediately, right out of the box, he goes, nothing. It should mean nothing, absolutely nothing. And I said, okay, can you expand on that a little bit? Why do you say being American should mean nothing? I don't believe in borders. I think we should have no borders. I think borders are artificial and they are a constraint to the human condition. And then he went on to explain his position. And that was an outlier. That's not somebody, most people, we didn't talk with his worldview.
But interesting.
Interesting, yes. There's those people out there. I met more than one like that. But they didn't, people are somewhat at a disadvantage because they are asked to think about this question for the very first time they've ever heard the question and articulate their thoughts, if they have thoughts on the subject, for the very first time. Now, I've gone back to people, I haven't re-interviewed people, but after them being on camera, they've come up to me and said, you know, I wish I had another chance at that question. I would answer it differently.
They thought about it.
But which is okay with me, because the whole point of the film isn't to say, this is the way it should be, America in the world. It's to get people to talk about it among themselves, to get the viewers at the end of the film to say, now I think I want to give this some thought myself. Let me talk to the people I went to see this film with, and let me have this conversation. When I'm in the States, I've had many screenings in the States, and it's been shown lots of times in front of audiences, and a lot of times I'm there. And it's the Q&A afterwards and the discussion that happens afterwards that is the most informative. The film is a platform that generates discussion and the conversation. That's the whole point. If the film gets people to think about their own thoughts, gets people to talk about their own thoughts and have a conversation with others, there's a hope of possibly going from thought to talk to the walk, and having some action. That's my hope.
If there is such a thing as a happiness index or a satisfaction index, it's a difficult question to answer this possibly. Do you think that in general, Americans are satisfied with their lot?
I think in general, Americans are. In general. On balance, it's still a very great place to be. But we need to also recognize our flaws. You cannot improve as a human in anything. If you're a manufacturer of anything, if you don't recognize what you can be doing better, you will automatically start the downward spiral. You have to constantly be vigilant on areas that need improvement. I think Americans, if I may say, are smart enough to have left themselves plenty of room for improvement. And we need to be working on that.
I know you alluded to this earlier. It was part of this is to encourage more people to vote. But moving away from that slightly, what one thing do you think that America needs to make it a better country?
I think we need to have genuine, true conversations without as much rhetoric. We have so many people here now in America who are in positions of influence, who come from a position of failing to listen to another viewpoint. We have become roadblocked. We've become a country of categories. By categories, I mean we view people so often as, well, you're black, or you're a woman, or you're a lesbian, or you're gay. And we've marginalized so many people. That has to, and yet we are one of the most diverse countries on the planet. I don't know if we are the most, but England has certainly got a lot of diversity. We certainly do, and may be the most diverse, but we have to actually embrace that and recognize that there are people that do have differences that are entitled to the same rights, benefits, and privileges that every white man enjoys. There's a lot of white privilege in America that is not necessarily good for the rest of the folks that are the minorities.
And where do you think America will be, in light of what, obviously the recent election as well, where do you see America in 5 years? Are you hopeful? Are you worried?
I always remain hopeful, absolutely. In my view, I mean, I know there's people that voted for Trump, and my film ended and wrapped completely in the editing 1 month before Trump announced his candidacy, and now we have him as the president of America. In 5 years will be 1 year after his first term, if he survives his first term. There's a lot of people out there that are looking to challenge him in the courts, and they're bringing him all sorts of constitutional issues against him in his first month. He's had more lawsuits against him in his first month from people who say that he is already not obeying the Constitution. So I don't know if he'll survive 4 years or not. If he does, he will certainly run again, in my view. And I'm hopeful that the people who were vacillating relative to Hillary and her world vision versus Trump's world vision will be able to get together and rise up and outnumber the folks that think that Trump is the worldview that we want. If you like Trump and his worldview, you really need to be in Trump's inner circle, because as far as I can see, Trump is about Trump first, and everybody else, if you're a friend of his, okay, but if you're not, he's not about the people. Where Hillary had her own set of bags that weren't necessarily hers.
No,
right. But she had to carry other people's baggage. I mean, her husband was impeached. She had Debbie Wasserman Schultz be exposed by an email scandal from WikiLeaks, and all of that ended up costing Hillary. And the FBI, Comey released 2 weeks prior to the election.
Yeah, I mean that was a low blow.
It wasn't even her emails that he was investigating, but people heard that and they thought that she was a crook, and people still are listening to this. And of course she's a crook, and this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But when you compare Trump versus Hillary's worldview, that's what I'm looking at. I'm not looking about whether she could be better or whether her effort at the email server that she used could have been done differently. It could have been, but she's not the first to do that. And incidentally, Trump has a private server for himself right now.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of hypocrisy here. So where do I see America in 5 years? Hopefully, it's always, in my view, progress is often 2 steps forward and 1 step back, but that's still forward progress.
Yeah.
I think personally, we've made a step back in electing Trump, or as Trump said, the election was rigged. He told us the election was rigged. Maybe we should believe him. It might have been rigged in his favor. Yeah. I can't prove it, but if I were to look at that, I would encourage people who have the authority and the ability to look not so much at voter fraud as Trump wants you to look at, but voting machine fraud, which is very different. And the reason it's different is if you don't have a voter verifiable paper trail and a full audit after an election, Your vote goes into one of these electronic machines and comes out the other side. You can't follow the vote when it's in that machine. You can't. The only way to determine whether or not you have the right tally is to do an audit. Now what can happen is you can audit these machines prior to the election and test them and all that, and they're going to work fine. The problem is the software that runs these machines is proprietary, trademark, under trade, it's my company's stuff. You can't see that software. I think that's wrong. I think we should be able to see the software. We should be able to have the code and know what the
like an open
source. It should be that way for federal elections. Absolutely. We have 15,000 precincts that are entitled to buy whichever machines that they want to buy, and not all of our 15,000 precincts have voter verifiable paper trail. So the machine can write software that looks good in the testing process, but when the election actually happens, it can flip a vote and flip the tally. So the winner becomes the loser. The valid winner becomes the loser, and the loser becomes the winner. You have a right total, which they can check very quickly. The totals match, but it's flipped. Now, the only way to know whether that's accurate is to do a paper audit. I mean, and a bona fide audit, not just a spot check. It has to be an audit. Right.
The whole lot.
We could fix this if we see the software and have confidence in the software. We don't have confidence in the software, and we don't have voter verifiable paper trails.
And just finally,
everywhere. We do have a lot of places, but I mean everywhere.
And just finally, I mean, it's very easy to look at things in hindsight and say, I wish I'd done this, but if you'd had the chance and say you had a crystal ball and you knew Trump was going to get in, would you have waited another year or two to make it so you could have, I don't know, half the documentary pre-Trump and half post-Trump? I mean, obviously you could do a sequel, I know that.
Yes, I could.
But do you wish, in hindsight, you could have done that, just split it that way, to see if there'd been different reactions, different answers?
I think the responses would be different in terms of using the name Trump a little bit more. They didn't use the word Trump at all in any of my conversations.
It was big,
they used the word Obama a lot. I mean, this is not a political film.
No.
Right, I mean, you can watch this film and it is apolitical. There is no bent. The bent is become informed.
Yeah.
Now, what that means, one of the solutions is we need more education. But that sometimes is self-referencing. I want people to be educated, but I want them to be educated like I'm educated. And that can be good or bad, so we have to qualify that too. If I could do it again and know that Trump was running, sure I would do it. But I picked a time when I did it. I started it in 2013 and finished it in 2015.
Just one of those things.
Just one of those things. But I could go back and do it again. I could ask this, do the same thing again and find a whole nother few hundred people to interview and probably come up with a different film, a different set of responses. But I'll bet they would still fall into these buckets that I was talking about. Freedom being the #1 word used. Everybody, what was very interesting to me? Once they used that word, I would always follow up whatever their buzzword was. Freedom, pride, equality, opportunity, these are several of the buzzwords. I would ask, well, how do you define freedom? I just wait. Almost to a person. None of them who used the word so freely and bandied it about as something to be cherished could define it.
Yeah.
They couldn't define it. They would give me examples of freedom. Well, freedom, when I'm free to drive anywhere I want to go, freedom to travel. Okay, that is an example of freedom. Here's my definition of freedom. Freedom is the absence of restraint and the availability of choice. That's freedom. Now, that's also chaos. If people are... So our constitutions, the Magna Carta, all of these great documents, they're not designed to provide freedom, they're actually designed to create some semblance of civilization among a framework under which we can have as much freedom as possible. If we had total freedom, you could shoot me in the face and say, hey, I didn't like that guy.
And it's free.
And you would have, and then other people would, hey, we didn't like that, and we'd shoot. That's where we started in some respect. And we said, this isn't really good for civilization. We have to start reining ourselves in. So we never have total freedom, although we bandy it about as if we do. Now, it is a relative term. Americans certainly have a lot more freedom than so many places in the world. So does England.
Yeah.
And we're fortunate in that respect when you look at it relative to the rest of the world. And the only way you know that is if you travel the world. So many of the people who voted for Trump never left home.
Yes, no. Ken?
Thank you very much, Stephen. I appreciate it.
No, wonderful. Thank you very much. Let me just